Radio SHAZZBOT, Issue 04, May 2025.
Beta Maximum Overdraft.
Episode 0406.
Humors and Innuendos. The Nouveau Retro Zeitgeist Errata Neurotica. And letters to the editors. J. Drewster Poindexter.
The opinions expressed in these pages do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of the crew chiefs and shift managers of Invisible Inc. publications, and they are intended primarily for satirical purposes only, plus the fact that, like, also. Anyway, any resemblance to any public or private figure is purely coincidental. Please note, some of this was written before more recent developments and events. Reader discretion is advised. Gilbert and Sullivan are the names of the gentlemen who signed the paychecks at my house. Cauliflower nostrils.
1. Childhood.
Did you know that historically, there was an actual open mic? Well, he was no patron saint, but he was more open to other people's interpretations anyway.
Many of the best bartender threats begin and end with, "If it turns out that you're lying to me, sir." You know, I think that one should be on Truth Social. Dude, I just think that black and white would capture the moment so well.
Most folks don't say, "You see what I'm saying," anymore. Because most folks just figure that most folks have own explanations for everything instead these days.
If you listen to the 80-year-old radio shows from the 1840s, you sometimes hear the voices of character actors from the later studio movies and TV eras, who were getting some of their first showbiz gigs in the then current New York or Los Angeles, but most in New York, 1940s radio show era.
For every voice of an Orson Welles or a Humphrey Bogart or a Vincent Price, there's a guy who did the voice of Popeye in the classic Fleischer Brothers cartoons, or a Mel Blanc from the Warner Brothers Bugs Bunny cartoons, or a dude who played the character of Uncle Charlie on Father Knows Best. TV's own William Demuris played Uncle Charlie.
With many of these voice actors, you can always tell that it's them in the different roles because they often use the same voice and vocal mannerisms. So I guess they were paying the voice of Popeye enough in spinach to keep him coming back for more. And we guess for Orson Welles, The Shadow, and William Bendis, The Life of Riley, or Fortigard, The Half Man, Half Biscuit, various, it was the same sort of a sweet role deal.
But maybe many of these voice actors just happen to sound like those characters, and they got the job based on just meeting of exceeding the expectations of a particular character type. Yup, we can see that. Although a few, it should be said, had been legitimate outstanding stage actors. So they had that going for them at audition time as well. But this was not true for the majority of these castings. Many of the actors just had a sound that those people who cast the radio show were looking for. Just as we're sure that there are 20 kids on skateboards out in the parking lot who'd love to have a chance take this voice acting part as well.
Hey, don't push your luck, kids. You can be replicated and replaced, you know. 6 months ago, dude, Smitty here was working on an oil rig refinery in the North Atlantic. But he knew a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy who said that he could make $15 a week 80 years ago as a voice character actor on the radio.
And that he was just chewing the scenery here at the oil refinery. And that he could instead be sitting in a railway car smoking one of those fat cigars. You know, and drawing a thick dime and sitting on Easy Street instead, flat foot. And he sure ain't no showroom dummy, is he? Yeah, that's the ticket.
Well, Marjolaine, it sounds like this special secret surprise meeting of the President's Council of Bad Financial Actors could be requiring a special secret surprise visit from the snot nose. Who knows what evil lurks in the noses of the hearts of a mean reuses? The snot nose knows. Say goodnight, Mrs. Brad Kavanaugh. Whoever you were.
If there's anybody who's still there after all that, you're a true fan. And okay, so now we can get on with this stuff.
2. Comics and music.
Like punk rock poet Henry Rollins once famously said, "This part here, I couldn't do this if I was on drugs. The rest of it, I dunno, maybe. And I won't be a sound check for violence, but if you hum a few bars, I think I can fake it." He also said, "Are you guys gonna stick around for Saccharine Trust? I think that they're coming up next. Only that bit wasn't nearly as famous."
Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? For one cannot go out in your direct sunlight between 10 and 6. Gertrude. Well, not without melting like a polar ice cap, anyway. For this is not your grandfather's ozone layer. Don't ya know? Shakespeare, measure for measure.
Back cover blurb for a probable Doc Salvage novella.
The creep with a leap. The billionaire in the Keds. The morally broken chatbot who wore tennis shoes.
Join Doc Salvage and his exciting pals, the furious, fabulous, furry five brothers in this new exciting Doc Salvage adventure. Thrill as he comes face to face with the evil billionaire Edmund Muskie. And does he have nefarious plans for Doc and his merry crew as he schemes to blow up the entire wicked fleet of his diabolical robot autocars? And at the sites of key government monuments and institutions too. All this to gain the envy of his insane yet still not quite mysterious emotional support financial backer hackers. The always cringe-worthy Orange Emperor of future unemployment. And at key areas of the narrative and plot points too.
This weird menace of the Tesla Lego war machines takes the man of brine and his amazing aging seafaring colleagues on a far-flunged, ill-advised odyssey and Iliad adventure to the far-fletched reaches of the occupied United Nations of the pre-apocalyptical Americas.
Watch Doc salvage tangle with the criminal mentalist Elon Musk rat and his Peter Pan-eating techno-brat Lost Boys, using his borrowed copyrighted technological wizardry and his borrowed plans to occupy the lost, far-fringed, and now twisted and lost continental divide of the occupied united vortices of the American continent.
See the furious, fabulous, furry five brothers in their wildest, woolliest adventures yet, as they come face to face with the mysterious, yet not too difficult to read Orange Oompa Loompa Emperor of the Unemployment.
And be sure to check out these other not-to-be-missed, anguished, angst-ridden Doc Salvage adventure novels. Join Doc Salvage as he faces
the other mystery of the 35-year-old grandmother of Senator Island,
the doctor of Ozzy whose healthcare system fell from space,
the running back who created his own biblical parables,
the newscaster turned desert planet senator who could sure light up a light room,
the brainworms that banned the cure for bad teeth,
the secret of the ex-mayor imp of the perverse.
Let's put Kimberly G in charge of the worst pep rally ever yet to come.
And many other exciting adventures left yet to be written. All ripped screaming and yawning from a yesteryear-week Agos headlines.
Don't trust the madness. Trust the science. Trust Doc Salvage and the furious, fabulous furry five brothers in their latest Bantam adventure sagas. Due in stores as soon as we finish writing them already, okay? Well, we did say that they were his latest adventures.
See your local botanical bookstore dealer for the most recent in-stock Doc Salvage adventure novellas. Now available at your local Blandham Clock of the Walk bookseller dealerships. Do today.
3. Florida politics.
Two lawyers are walking down the street, and the first lawyer says to the second lawyer, geez, he'd really like to date her. And the second lawyer says, yeah, out of what, money or property? Classics Illustrated.
And the second lawyer says, oh, you don't want her, she's married, dude. Her kids are like 6 and 8. But they're like a 4, it does 12 and 14.
And the second lawyer says, hey, if you think that you're tired of all this flag promo beach towel exploitation now, just wait 2 years for the semi-quavering, semi-colonial, semi-quintessential, is it? You gonna eat those freedom fries, cousin?
Jokes courtesy of Classics Illustrated.
Paid for by the fundamentalist Beelzebub, the wrong-headed Political Alternatives Committee, Dante's seventh circle of Hades, where the shrewd banker people go for eternal triumph, and the very dark, very old, evil one incarnate who lives underneath the stairs. And I approve this message.
Let's put the flying baby in charge of crying the plane instead next time. I don't care if we get the views. You think I care if we get the views? Well, my caterer's staff needs to put food on the table too. You know. Murray. Harold Punter. Truth Takes a Holiday. 1956.
I think that the energy secretary was good at his job until about 2:30 in the afternoon, but after his 3-martini lunch, forget it. Of course, that was back in the days when you could get away with that sort of thing. Of course.
4. Movies and TV.
Written under the influence of Dr. Pepper, who wasn't a real physician, like Dr. Jill Biden. He was really only a doctor of education.
I'm actually in the theater.
Everybody says that we're so brave, but it's mostly just guts, really.
I'm actually in the theater.
You merely pluck one from the trees. And fortunately, many of them are already dressed as trees to begin with.
Dude, I'm actually in the theater.
The bus stop was a dance that they did back in the studio's 64 days. Well, you only go around once, I suppose.
The Breakfast Club is the perfect first date movie. It's the key movie that you tell her is your favorite movie on the first date, Anakin. And not, say, A Clockwork Orange by any stretch of the imagination. Well, maybe better luck next time, my little droogies.
The internet is more like an indie rock version of the movie industry. See, there is a way that a poor person can be famous in this country without shooting someone. It's called indie rock. The internet. where just anyone can hit a home run with a boffo smash hit held over for the 136th straight week in a row by a simple, random twist of fate and coincidence and happenstance, and the improbability itself. Oh, and sharing. Just ask Justin Bieber. Variety.
Letters to the editors.
Dear seasonal hirelings,
If these public supermarket commercials don't get to you each and every hologram season, and you don't have to run from the TV room like you're 10 years old and it's the It's Alive movie trailer on TV all over again, then you just haven't lived my life, dude.
But this is totally different. If those G-darned media-deprived orphans from 3 doors down the street come around here again this year with their misinterpreted Xmas carols, and their evangelical tongue twisters, and their innocent faces, and their post-apocalyptic nursery rhyme taunting, then with the G-darned as my witness, I'm going to get out the riot hose on those kids. And then I'll take a pitch pipe to those little twerps G-darned kneecaps.
Signed,
The mayor, busy off somewhere in an M. Night Shyamalan thriller, The Villages, The Florid Does.
P.S. Imposing your religion on other people is a bit like watching 1 or 2 movies ever, and then thinking that you can write a book about film theory. They're all gonna laugh at you indeed.
editor's reply.
well, it's very simple, dude. The Sermon on the Mount preaches a message of diversity, equality, and inclusion. But we try not to talk man-to-man with an unschooled opponent. Unschooled Skeeter? Unschooled scene partner? White House Speaker Matt Johnson?
Occupation: armchair anarchist.
Letters to the editors.
Dear Squires,
After the then New York Mayor George Lindsay said that the movie companies of the early 1870s could start using the streets of New York to film their studio-budgeted movies, it might have spelled the beginning of the end of the Woodstock utopian optimism era of the late 1860s.
Los Angeles movie settings could substitute for anywhere. It certainly had the palm trees for it. But no New York could only be no New York. And movies based in the 5 boroughs had a bleak hopelessness all their own.
The lead characters were usually not the good guys, and they hardly ever won out anyway, even if they were. And back then, people who lived in New York understood that not only would the trash not be picked up on time, but neither would the homeless and the victims of drug abuse, or those who were living on an ever-diminishing fixed budget income. But then, neither would the no New Yorkers themselves be picked up on time by the never-present taxi cabs that you always saw in the movies. But that was the then, and this is the now. And under the new regime of irresponsible, front-stabbing, billionaire dummy devils, it looks like this bleakness sort of thing is going to become the new entire not just a movie economic reality for the US, once again. And well before the halfway mark, too.
This bleakness and hopelessness of 1870s No New York was reflected in the so-called New Hollywood establishment movies filmed in the New York movie era of the 1870s, in movies with titles like The French Connection and Panic in Needle Park and Serpico, and even The King of Marvin Gardens, stretching all the way to the no New Jersey boardwalk monopoly cultures.
Back then, Al Homan and Dustin Pacino and Yul and David Brenner and the other New Hollywood movement luminaries had allegedly conspired to put LSAT in the water supplies of the Wall Street crowd and in Washington Park neighborhood or something, depending on who you talk to.
But if someone did want to put LSAT in the water supply somewhere, then the current Hollywood stars should maybe consider starting with a favorite local watering hole like the Villages planned country club, resort golf park town outside of Ocala, Florida. M. Night Himalayan, call your neighborhood copyright attorney's office.
See, the retirees who would dare to shamelessly live in such a place might really need their cracked window rear-view mirror perspectives retuned to so-called normal. Maybe even more than the Wall Street or the Washington D.C. crowd does these days. But at least it's a start. And hey, the 5 boroughs of no New York are already making a stress-free communal living at its most dangerous game in the best way they know how, my fellow truth believers. So don't get getting any of your ideas now.
One guesses that the Villages community outside of Ocala as a place to start mass LSAT distribution makes the most sense, really. To gain an awareness of the connectedness of the entire universe and a place to dislocate and displace the overwhelming sense of the self, it might really do such a group of such misplaced people some real good, really. Yup, we think that choosing the planned country club resort golf park town outside of Ocala, Florida as a launch pad for such an endeavor would win by a landfill.
Post-Boomer Cotnip, The Third House on the Left, The Florid Does, USA.
Editor's reply.
Dear Post-Boomer Cotnip,
Don't forget Wild in the Streets with the divine Miss Shelley Winters. 14 or fight. 14 or fight. And don't forget to stay for the unforgettable ending too. No one over 14 years old ever gets to vote for the president again.
Or does everything that came before 2 months ago just seem like a pale reflection of the now? Or maybe just a fond remembrance of things past? BLSAT, huh? We'd like to hear your thoughts about all of this.
5. Psychology.
How the heck can heck be any worse? A concerned uncle.
That other cow is very flatulent. I think he's some kind of a methane actor. It's a funny thing about organized right-wing religion. You can't just come out and say beer farts on a Sunday morning. But you can't say cow farts on a Sunday morning.
It's cathartic. It's mildly artistic. Well, it'll take the piss out of some people anyway. And maybe there is no hope. Yeah, but maybe you've never seen Hope's profile picture. Or hear most shared vacation photos either. Wowzers, what a dish.
And then I hit my bottom and I was on VH1 Behind the Music. And then I hit my bottom is a registered trademark of VH1 Behind the Music and its subsidiaries.
Could Kyle Rittenhouse still be facing a full scholarship to Trump University? Could the subway strangler now be looking at a full ride as our next Secretary of Transportation? Could Luigi Mangione be the Che Guevara of his generation? With his poster looking great on dorm room walls, but with people still not really clear about what exactly he actually represents? Mangione mania. Catch it.
Well, officer, it seems to me that I did hear a guitar over at his house one day. But I might have heard it from a friend, who'd heard it from a friend, who'd heard it from another who'd been messing around.
6. Random.
You know, there really was a Dr. Jonathan Coleslaw. Well, his company made the boxes, and he just put his name on them. Kind of like Trump and the Gulf of America. He was wanting to call it the Gulf of the world's biggest hole. But his Intel handlers would have had to open up an actual book to figure out how to spell that hole. And that's just too much effort, really.
Well, it was nice to visit the literary orphanage, and then to make a full stop at the Kindle graveyard on the way out. But why should we buy something when we can get it outright for free anyway? It's all right. Well, let ourselves out. I guess we can then exit through the gift shop. Brad and Janet. Visually impaired poet, indeed.
If you're gonna jingle, jingle all the way, or don't jingle at all. Nobody likes a half-hearted jingler, and the American people will not tolerate a quarter. Dogecoin MacArthur, addressing the troops in the desert, Paranoid Pictures, 1976.
Talk to your doctor or pharmacist about an RFK Jr. vaccine while supplies last. And have yourself a no frills, no fluoride, polio-free, little tiny Tim toothpaste, add X mask, this X mask. Of course, as always, a full set of teeth between them is optional.
Commercial break.
You're choking in it.
Wild, new turbo phosphate toothbrush detergent is more than just wild. It actually washes your dentures while you have them strapped to the top of your car and you're driving them home from the laundromat in the big city. And I've got the mineral rights to prove it.
Later, the next morning.
Hey, carte blanche on the stolen freedoms. Rosie, these new anti-fluoridated dentures came out great. Now that's what I call it's always darkness before the dawn. And just look at that shine.
Well, I guess you can plough the roadkill out of those tooth fishes now, Bob. And without moral consequence. Ancient Illuminati secret, huh?
But when you go taking pictures of Mar-a-Lago, you ain't gonna make it with anyone else though. Dig it.
Aim to your business school smart. I have the best bad lyrics. Am an evil genius. McDonald's Day Drunk. Quizmaster Savant. Reality TV game show poet. And the End of America profiteer and theosopher.
She's a forensics financial fiduciary. She figures out how dead people can best sell their houses. There are stories of her hitchhiking out here about once every 10 years. She's really just looking for new client prospects. It's kind of like a local legend. It's really put this place on the map, although there are stories that this place was already on the map before we even got here. You can bank on it.
You know, for just another baseball mascot. You've sure got a lot of pull in these parts. Poulsen, the San Antonio Rooster.
7. Us Politics.
Step aside Jerry Martin and Dean Lewis. The Flying Forfers fight again, and then go out and get ice cream. Was nothing special. Move over the Mills Brothers. The big broadcast can wait. Stay in your lane. Bing Hope and Bob Crosby. On the road to Skeeter Kluter Jr. The Third's all-night drive through dive bar eatery and garage auto parts repair and order rewrite emporium. Was predictable as usual. Hypotis Cat. Are you ready for this one?
Here comes that classic esoteric. The first scene is always the best encore routine in the comedic duo Abbott and Costello's 1954 riotous comedic hit that left the great white way psychiatrists raving for weeks. from Abbott and Costello meet Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. It's their Who's On First, Matt Gaetz routine.
Costello.
Is there a Florida senator who was briefly considered for the Attorney General's office?
Abbott.
Matt Gaetz.
Costello.
And did they do a hush-hush cover-up job on his child endangerment charges after his handlers paid enough money to have it dismissed from the public record?
Abbott.
Matt Gaetz.
Costello.
And does this allegation and some incurring drug abuse charges seriously draw into question the integrity of the people who are trying to cover for this creepy and obviously brain-damaged dude?
Abbott.
Matt Gaetz.
Costello.
That's what I've been trying to ask you. Hey, wait. What was his name again?
And that JT Cash advance guy? I can't wait to read his tell-all book when it comes out after he gets fired like all the rest of the Trump accomplices. He's like the Winston Smith lights of his generation, but maybe based on his performance in the vice presidential debates. It seems like he just picked the wrong stepdad to go with in the divorce. Now, of course, we said we weren't going to fact-check, didn't we?
Well, if Nancy Paparazzi thinks she can take my steaks or my guns or my trucks, then she's got another think coming. I mean, screw Ted Cruz's grandkids, and screw their grandkids as well. But I'm sure that there are childless Batmen on both sides of that equation, really.
8. Religion.
Saying bless you after a sneeze from a Fox News viewer? Well, that and $14 will buy you a cup of coffee these days.
Love is like money or oxygen. When you have it, you take it for granted. But when you don't have it, then nothing else is more important. Well, if I don't doubt my own beliefs at least once a day, then I don't feel like I'm doing it correctly.
Well, there were a few different theological schools on the subject. If the good Lord will provide, or if the good Lord helps those who help themselves. But I think the jury is still out, and it's not too late to call a mistrial real. Hurricane Helena.
Early to bed, early to rise. You just need to work out a few of the equilibrium equations. Kids, here, I did the first one for you.
Don't just listen to the loudest voice, King Kong. Also listen to the softest voice. The one that you hear on the inside, too. But nowadays, Mother Nature is more like Meryl Streep in Fatal Attraction. It's just like, if I can't get your attention, then no one else will either. Jello arms.
How about honest guy, taxpayer, family man DJ Trump instead? Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves, really. And what exactly is a memorial majority? Is that some kind of a mental hospital?
B.
Letters to the editor.
Dear History Buffo Jerk Faces.
Edmund Muskie? But I thought we'd heard the last of the United States Senator from Maine from 1958 to 1980, though? Edwin Muskie wants to blow up all of those robot Tesla cars of his at the same time, positioning himself as the evilest James Bond like villain of all time. Well, exempting for all of the other classic James Bond villains of all time in those classic movie franchise installments, of course.
But at least Edwin Muskie, the 64th governor from Maine from 1955 to 1959, did have some political experience that he could fall back on. Not like the rest of these Silicon Valley tech-based billionaire straw dogs who want to put their money towards messing around with the public freedoms, and who cover up their own greedy interests in a convoluted version of playing world politics, instead of maybe just curing world hunger several times over.
Edmund Muskie, a member of the Maine House of Representatives from 1946 to 1951, and also his party's Democratic nomination for U.S. presidential candidate in 1968, was at least the 58th Secretary of State under President Jimmy Carter from 1980 to 1981. See, I do my homework, smart guy.
And Edmund Muskie paid over $43 billion to buy the Twitter anti-social media site, an allegation that he openly confirms to this day. Do you know how many cheap acoustic Japanese knockoff guitars that you could buy for $43 billion? Well, it's more than enough to cure world hunger several times over. I'll tell you that much.
Just here for the malapropisms. Ranger Rick. Up a tree in the southwest central wilderness. The Florid does.
P.S. I'll tell you the name of one guy who ain't gonna play Sun City with this South African white billionaire Edwin Muskie dude, Miami Steve Jobs, that's who. And hey, maybe you can clear this one up for me. Did Nelson Mandela ever play with Little Ricky's kids in that Nelson pop group ensemble from the 1890s? Now, they did eventually play at a reformed Sun City, didn't they? Oh Dad, look. We all look like Bonnie Carlos now.
Editor's reply.
Wasn't there a Devo Cheap Trick split 7-inch on blue vinyl crossover hit about that subject, pal? I love you, Spud Boy, but I hate your Spud friends. The Spud Police? I spud you to spud me? If you want my spud, you got it? Whip it until it surrenders, Spud Boys.
Letters to the editor.
Dear sires,
If Boris Obama had done that, or this, or even this or that, we'd have never heard the end of it from the right-wing lunatic fridge. Do you remember Monica Lewinsky, you ask? But that was a huge scandal back in the day, wasn't it? As they're tying the bricks to your ankles and telling you leap forward into the crocodile tank.
But it wouldn't get as much traction with the right-wing lunatic press today, would it? They have their own scandals to create, as they're fitting you for cement sneakers and walking you towards the deepest end of the quicksand. Or the journalist's row burial plot in the DC Nationals end zone.
Gosh heck. Remember Benghazi, or Vince Foster, or the Iran-Contra money for weapons affair with the Saudi Arabians that got everyone so hot under the tunic? Well, this ain't got nothing on that. But at least the late Republican Party trick-or-treaters pretended to have a conscience back then, didn't they?
As they're fitting you for ungrounded electrical tape and rewiring the dining room outlets to make it look like an accidental insurance fire.
Does anyone actually remember that one pre-operative Republican senator candidate gal who actually admitted to having dabbled in witchcraft back when she was in college? This would be political suicide today. Unilaterally. As they're measuring your head size and warming up the portable guillotine in the Jeffrey Epstein's mock-up portable prison cell. Hey, I have an idea. Does anybody know any jokes?
Jeffy,
Editor's reply.
Dear Jeffy,
Let us just be the first to admit that writing therapy is still seen as a legitimate form of psychological theater therapy. But that at this point, this magazine just can't guarantee its work. Let alone its rule number 1, do no harm results. We just don't have that Midas touch these days. But the current president, Edwin Muskie, does seem to have that famous minus plus touch instead.
don't leave off calling him that morally bankrupt billionaire with something extra on your list, Jeffy. But as always, standard disclaimer does apply. We just can't guarantee that writing therapy is all that therapeutic anymore. I sinks. If I had a hammer, it'd hammer in the morning.
Editor's reply, excuse me, but this magazine has had a difficult life. You'd smell bad and you'd talk funny if you had this job too.
Letters to the editor.
Dear RFK brainworm enthusiasts,
I can't pretend to understand the long-running Cartoon Network Adult Swim TV series, Squidbillies, but I have seen it played out time and time again with my own eyes, just 2 blocks west of here, in the florid does. And I feel the same way lately about the 80-year coma white dude billionaires that are trying to live forever. Don't touch the adrenochrome chrome. The very same billionaire TV investors who are behind this latest turn half of the voting public into the Unabomber working class.
I mean, it's fine if you have a demented outlaw uncle-in-law. I thought he was your demented outlaw uncle-in-law who wants to live in the woods without a consumer culture on the skids or otherwise. And with or without the progressive politics as well. Really? But if he or she expects everyone else to live in caves and turn their backs on 100 years of progress and become their own version of the untold tales of the Unabomber, then therein lies the subject of this little discourse. Pizzagate made simple.
Some people always want to accuse other people of doing these things that they themselves are the most guilty of. But then there are always those people who can't accept real criticism, and they're the type that accuse everyone else of accusing everyone else of accusing everyone else of doing those things that they themselves are the most guilty of. And we call these people 80-year-old coma white dude billionaires.
And adrenochrome and Pizzagate is a very good example of this. It's just these 80-year-old coma white dude billionaires who are trying to live forever, who are trying to manufacture this smokescreen of extreme nationalism. So my Gentile readers, my point is, you better make that 8 slices, Rupert Murdoch. I don't think that I could eat 12. And the red herring anchovies? I don't think that I could stomach those forever either.
Bon appetite. Yup, filthy dirty 80-year-old commie white dude billionaires B words.
George, Clooney, Hollywood, on vacation in the florid does.
Editor's reply.
We only watch about 16 episodes of in a year. We hear that some people binge old TV series episodes, but here at this magazine, we purge old TV series episodes with a dedicated fervor like we're running away from some kind of forgotten public health crisis.
Editor's reply, excuse me, but this magazine has had a difficult life. You'd smell bad and you'd talk funny if you had this job too.
End bit.
It's sometimes said that being a digital content creator is a thing that can't be explained if you haven't experienced it, and that it requires no explanation if you have, so in that respect, it's kind of like joining Zen Buddhism, and then traveling the 7-fold path, blindfolded and spun around 3 times in a row. or witnessing a recent episode of the Zen Proto-Boomer TV favorite, Supermarket Speculation, while tripping out on heavy doses of the expired TBS pharmacy cough and cold medications.
But here, we're going to turn it over to a public servant's announcement. See, it's their regiment now, truth believers.
To whom it might disturb.
The ex-president once removed, and his billionaire all-you-care-to-steal handlers are using a shock and awe method, the likes of which has seldom been employed by a leader against one's own countrymen. At least since Joe Stalin's early Soviet Union, or at least since the Joe McCarthy bowling for communists era. It's been like 20 or more wartime atrocities coming out of Margot Legoland each and every week since the recent inaugural abomination.
With basically all of these now legalized, but never legitimized, immoral and troubling appropriations against the letter and intent of the US Constitution now taking place, and that are currently driving up the blood pressures and compromising the civil liberties of most free thinkers in the US. But maybe there is something that you can do instead of just attacking that US biz truck out front with a prison shiv.
So, to keep your sanity, my fellow freethinkers, why not just pick out 3 or 4 of your favorite pet issues and follow the lead stories about those illegal trumping methods and foul Senate misappropriation committees instead? You can bet that at least more than a few other people are following the other serious issues and taking them seriously too. And this way, maybe that sinking feeling of being overwhelmed by all the bad nightly news reports might not be so all-consuming. You know, in order to return to some presence of mind and mental health and moral well-being, during this, the worst is yet to come, Trump rally era.
Plus, have you ever gotten a look at the Donald's face up close? He's not really the guy that they think he is. Or that his billionaire handlers say that he is. He's more like a broken and insane zoo animal who's just reading from a tortured script these days. This, kids, is elderly abuse. You can see it in that 1,000-yard stare of those squinting eyes of his.
So, gentle readers, just pick out 3 or 4 of your favorite issues, causes, or public health crisis, or civil emergency concerns that you feel are the most just waiting to happen. And make a list on your phone of your favorite local and state senators and representatives who best represent these issues. And then call their offices and let them hear your voice on this matter.
Thrill them with your deep knowledge and old woman, tribal sage like wise guy understanding of your favorite issues. And give them hardcore examples what you'd like to see done with your hard-earned taxpayer dollars at work. Just go total Turbo Karen and Darren Mania on the abysses instead. These days, you can even Google a few templates of info concerning your favorite issues, if you're not quite sure of what you might say.
This is the way that democracy is supposed to work, kiddos, even in today's brand new dark ages. And even if one of your favorite issues is just democracy itself. Again, just pick out 3 or 4 political issues and pay attention to those only, instead of becoming so completely overwhelmed that you might go after your own iPad with a hammer and a sickle. A bird in the hand is worth 2 in the failed trickle-down economics bush, Effendi.
Plus, if they do get sick of your hearing your voice on their other end, these phone bank cultures have an average turnover rate of only about 6 weeks anyway. So you can never step into the same burning because it's on fire river twice. Harriet or Mildred at the phone bank might be gone in 6 weeks or a month anyway. Whichever comes first. Like the bad guys say, that's just the price tag of doing business these days.
Stay involved. The phone banks are most used to hearing from the Rhino Republican trick, or treaters, who usually make these calls. It's typically 4 to 1 on these calls, and sometimes 11 or 12 to 1, compared to the open-minded people who should be making the phone bank calls. And phone-ups from constituents about the politicians' fat cat NASCAR jacket sponsorships, if that's your issue, are a lot of the time the only way that many politicians can find out what's exactly on the mind of their voters proper.
You can't complain if you don't even try. So what are you waiting for? Just remind them that too many corporate-sponsored brand muffins do make fools of us all. Plus, venting your anger this way is still cheaper than Scientology.
This has been a public servant's announcement with guitars.
If you've made it to the end of this comic book radio show, then you deserve to give yourself a huge round of applause and maybe some cookies and beer to be keeping up with the jokesters next door. Now go watch some cognitive psychology, true crime files, cooking programs, or someone else's family based in TV reality game show host bloopers reel, or imagined, or another. You've earned it. Truth believers, thanks for your ears. And remember, feedback is always welcome.
Meanwhile, 2 million people are frantically searching for running water in the Gaza Strip. Peace out.
Copyrights. 2025.
No CG, I was harmed in the making of this comedy, radio comic book, podcast episode.